Welcome to the basics video, where I go over the basics of the phone that the average person will care about. This video is for the Razer phone. Feel free to check out my specs video for a more detailed explanation of this phone. This Razer phone has two 12 megapixel cameras on the back, along with an 8 megapixel camera on the front. Overall, the pictures are pretty good. This is not the highlight of the phone, clearly, but the camera does work. Sure, the second sensor is a telephoto lens that adds an optical zoom of 2 times, but the performance is decent when compared to other phones in its class. Something to note is that the built-in camera app is very basic. This app barely has portrait mode, and this phone has been out for almost 9 months. This phone cannot capture 60 frames per second video and does not have optical image stabilization. In that sense, the camera is disappointing, but for regular pictures, the camera works out fine. The camera does work at night, but like I said, there is no optical image stabilization. This means that video recording needs to be done without moving a lot, along with taking pictures at night. I wasn't too impressed with this camera, but it isn't the reason you buy this phone. So pretty much the stock camera app is pointless, and you have to have a third-party application to do pretty much anything. Overall, I would say that these cameras get a 6 out of 10. Like I said in my specs video, I'm glad that Razer stuck with stock Android rather than adding a custom skin. Sure, there are some apps that add customization, but it is very minimal. This phone does come with Nova Launcher Prime, which essentially leaves you to a limitless amount of home screen customization. Double tap to wake exists in this phone, which is awesome, yet I rarely ever use it because of the way that the power button works. The power button has a built-in fingerprint scanner, but it doesn't function like most Android phones. Like the iPhone, you have to click the button before the phone registers your fingerprint. Not a huge deal, but it's slightly frustrating that you have to click the button when you're already resting your finger on the fingerprint scanner. This phone has been upgraded to Android 8.1 Oreo and should be upgraded to Android P when it comes out. I don't know what else to say, the phone is pretty much stock Android just with a few ways to personalize the phone. Oh, this phone does have an ambient display, but it's always weird on LCD screens. For me, the software is solid and fast, so it gets a 9 out of 10. As for battery, it's pretty awesome. This phone has a 4000 milliamp cell, so yeah, this phone is supposed to last a long time. I assume that since this is a gaming phone, the battery life wouldn't last as long as I needed it to, but I was surprised by the performance. After 15 hours and 42 minutes of usage, my phone was left with 47%, and 1.5 hours of that was screen on time. Another day I got 10.5 hours of usage with 9% remaining, and 4 hours and 15 minutes of that was screen on time. Another day I got 16 hours and 16 minutes of battery usage with 18% remaining, and 3 hours and 58 minutes of that was screen on time. All of these figures are with the brightness all the way up, resolution set to 1440p, and the screen at 120 Hz. This phone seemed to beat every phone that I've reviewed, including the Moto Z2 Force. This makes sense because of the larger battery, but there still should be some credit given to Razer for even deciding to put a huge battery in this phone. Overall, the battery category receives an amazing 9.25 out of 10. Since this is Razer's first phone, we don't really have anything to compare it to. To be fair to the past and future basic reviews, I will use the Nextbit Robin as a previous model. These phones are technically in the same family. In all ways, the Razer phone is bigger. The Razer phone is taller, wider, thicker, and heavier. In fact, the Razer phone is actually 31% heavier than the Robin. Before we go farther, let me state that the Razer phone has more space, but it does not come with a headset jack. Even with making this phone thicker, the camera now protrudes. The camera has also been upgraded from a single 13 megapixel sensor to a dual 12 megapixel sensor setup, along with one being a telephoto lens. The front camera has been upgraded as well, moving from a 5 megapixel to an 8 megapixel sensor. The back of the Robin was plastic, while the Razer phone is a matte black aluminum back. I haven't held the Robin in person, but I would assume that the Razer phone would feel sturdier with that metal back. The front of the phone is pretty similar, just with the speaker cover extending the entire top and bottom of the phone, rather than just covering up the speakers. Even the camera and sensor setup is still the same, which I think is a pretty cool setup. As for the screen, lots of things has happened. The Robin had a 5.2-inch 1080p LCD with a 60Hz refresh rate, while the Razer phone has a 5.7-inch 1440p LCD with a refresh rate of 120 Hz. To me, the bezels also look smaller. Another thing is that the Robin has Gorilla Glass 4, while the Razer phone has Gorilla Glass 3. Weird, but it isn't the first time that we've seen something like this happen. The processor, GPU, and RAM got a huge upgrade, moving from the Snapdragon 808 processor to the Snapdragon 835 processor, along with 3GB to 8GB of RAM. The battery size increased by a massive 1,320 milliamps. This makes sense because it is a gaming phone, but still, that's a very nice upgrade. Lastly, there are minor additions like Bluetooth 4.2, Quick Charge 4 Plus, memory card support along with 64GB built in, USB OTG support, and dramatically louder speakers. Okay, maybe those are pretty important. Something to think about, however, is that the Razer Phone came out a year and 9 months after the Nextbit Robin, so there is a decent amount of research and development done on this phone. Overall, I would say that it is pretty obvious that this is a major upgrade, so this category gets an 8.5 out of 10. Now, as you may guess, this category is going to be difficult to do because availability for these parts are very limited. With this said, the phone seems to be pretty durable. The screen has Gorilla Glass 3, which isn't supposed to be that durable, but the screen doesn't extend to the edges of the phone, so it should survive some bad falls. The camera lens cover is slightly lower than the ring around it, but I would assume that it could break. As for the back, I can't find any replacements, but it looks like the more damage you do to this phone, the more silver will show. Also, notice that speaker grill? It's made out of plastic, easy to scratch, and easy for dust and dirt to get stuck in there. The charging port is soldered onto the daughter board, so you could replace it without soldering if it does break, but it's going to be next to impossible to find that board. The battery would need to be replaced at some point, but I think you can assume that it's going to be almost impossible to find that battery. But who knows? Batteries are easier to recreate. I can see a third party making this battery someday. Parts for this phone at the time of making this video are non-existent. Might be because of the age of the phone or the popularity, but either way, I hope Razer can fix these issues at reasonable prices. Especially since it's common for the screen to go bad on this phone. Also, taking advantage of the warranty is concerning if you aren't the original owner. The scoring for this is going to be a little bit weird, but I can't see Razer charging astronomical rates for these repairs, so the Razer phone will get a 7 out of 10 for durability and repair cost. Now, should you buy this phone? With a score of 79.5%, I believe that this is a good contender for the phones in its class. Also, for being a flagship phone, Razer did a really good job on their first phone. It's an all-around good phone, but I can see why people don't think that this phone would be pretty. The phone is pretty robust, but I think it looks clean and fits the whole gaming look. I wish that this phone had a brighter screen and a headset jack, but for some people, they might be okay with that. It would be nice to have wireless charging as well, but I don't think that this phone would be as tough as it is now if it did. I hope you learned something from these videos, but now I want to learn something from you. Do you think that gaming phones are here to stay, or is it just a phase? Let me know in the comment section or on Twitter at MattofRWR. And feel free to follow me on the social media listed above. Also, subscribe to my channel so you can see more videos like this. Every sub helps. Thanks for watching.